Hi guys, welcome back to yet another fun DIY video here about good old Athena. This weekend is going to be 100% DIY, none of this pesky boat show stuff. I'm going to start out here aboard Athena, then we're going to move up to the workshop and get started working on the fiberglass dodger and the rudder. On a little side note, today is a special day. I am turning 38. And what better way to celebrate my birthday than to go ahead and install the spiffy new stainless steel exhaust elbow I brought back from the US. If you guys recall, in December I pulled the old exhaust elbow off of the engine. There was a little bit of corrosion that actually turned out to be a lot of corrosion. Feast your eyes on this, whatever this is, oozing out of it. That is very yucky. Oh, stainless steel. Old, crusty, rusty. I'm not the world's smartest man, but I know which one of these two is the spiffiest for sure. While I was ordering spare parts for the heat exchanger, I believe I also ordered a new gasket and some new bolts for the new heat exchanger. The gasket is right here. As far as the new nuts, I think they might be hiding in here. Ah, here we go. This might very well be the most affordable thing I've ever ordered from Volvo. These four were only around $2, compared to around $80 for a new thermostat. I'm gonna go ahead and call this a good sign. The holes in the gasket actually lines up with the holes in the exhaust elbow, so yeah, I think this is a good quality spare part, even though it is not an original Volvo part. I'll include a link in the description to where I purchased this from. I noticed they had stainless steel exhaust elbows for a lot of different engines, so if you're in the market for one, they might have one that fits your engine, and this does look pretty decent. Well, this wasn't quite what I was expecting to see. There's a bunch of ice down here. I did notice someone stole the lead block I put over the temporary hole for the steering pedestal. I sealed this piece of acrylic with a little bit of butyl tape. Now, butyl tape is a horrible adhesive, so I put a big blob of lead on top of this to seal it, but what the heck good does that do when someone steals the bloody lead? I'll get the ice out of there once it melts just a little bit. That'll be a lot easier than trying to chip it out. But let's go ahead and get this mounted. Things are a little bit cramped in here, so it's going to be difficult to really show you guys this. The exhaust elbow sits here below the heat exchanger. I've already cleaned the surface here to get rid of the little bit of remnants of the old gasket. There's a bracket down here that secures some wiring, but that is going to go on the outside of the exhaust elbow. So let's get that out of the way and get the gasket onto here. And then the exhaust elbow. Before I tighten these nuts, I better remember to put this little guy on here. Now, of course, it would have been awesome if I had put both of the hose clamps for this little guy somewhere where I could find them. I seem to have lost one in the process. Okay, there we go. I'll order an extra hose clamp and I can always come back and put that on there. I just need to remember to do it. And there we go. The engine is now one step closer to being all put back together again. I was a little bit hesitant about going with a third-party exhaust elbow because I chose to go that route aboard Obelix and had a lot of trouble mounting the thing, but this worked out perfect. The exhaust elbow is made by HDI Marine, replacement number 861906. I don't know about their exhaust elbows for other engines, but the one for the D2-40 seems pretty freaking awesome. So like I said, I'll include a link for this in the description. I'll go spend the rest of my birthday with my Icelandic sheepdog Jökull, and I'll see you guys up at the workshop. Welcome to the workshop. As you might be able to see, I'm at least partially set up for what I'm going to be doing this weekend. Yeah, you good. You good. Yeah, you good. You good. With the help of the lovely Mr. and Mrs. Cement Boat, both the Dodger and the Rudder have been moved up here. And of course, this is the Dodger. I'll see if I can find a quick bit of footage to show you what this thing looks like mounted on the boat. Yes, I know the Dodger looks a little sci-fi-ish, but I like it. So I'm gonna keep this one instead of building a brand new one. You might be wondering why this thing is here in the workshop. Well, it is a little holy. I've already filled in 2 old holes from some big speakers, but there are plenty of other smaller holes. Also, a lot of the edges are pretty banged up, so there is a ton of minor cosmetic work to do on this thing. Before we get to any fiberglass work, however, the first step is to put together my new utility cart. I'm sure that's going to speed up the process and be very handy for any upcoming projects. 진짜. Ah, yes, the destroyer of all things cardboard. How awesome is this little thing? My very own little epoxy cart that I can move around to wherever I need it. Before I get a chance to use my spiffy new cart, there is the small matter of a ton of prep work. All of these holes are from old hardware, and I'm probably going to be mounting hardware somewhere close to these positions again, and I don't want that to crack. So rather than just filling these holes with thickened epoxy, I am going to have to lay up just a little bit of glass. That is going to mean a fair amount of extra work, but there is an upside to it. If I add a bit of glass, this won't happen. You see how this repair here has kind of chipped away from the edge? That would never have happened had this also been glassed. Some of the holes were sealed up with what looks like silicone, and I want to take great care to get rid of all the silicone before I start painting. Otherwise, I'm going to mess up the paint job. I've gone over every one of the holes to make sure that I got rid of all of that silicone, and that means I can now get to sanding. That just about takes care of all of the holes on this section here. There's still the matter of the edges, and then there are a lot of holes right here. There's a hole like this one on each side of the Dodger, and therefore letting lines through. Now, one of the previous owners, I'm assuming, got tired of water getting in through here, so he put a piece of foam and some wood over that to keep the water out. That is definitely somewhat of a janky solution, and I'm hoping I can come up with something better than this. But for now, I just want to get all of these holes filled in. The last little bit of sanding before I'm ready to start laying up some glass are these edges here. This is a pretty sharp corner, and when this thing was still in the mold and they were laying up glass, they didn't get the glass all the way out into this corner, and that's left little pockets of air here. Meaning what shaped this corner here was just gel coat, which of course is very brittle, and when I started moving the Dodger around, it cracked. It's only a few millimeters, so I'm just going to knock this down and rebuild this shape with some fairing compound. As you can see, there are a lot of holes to fix, but at least I should be done sanding for now. Whoops, it seems like I'm not all the way done sanding yet. I've got this giant area where that old speaker used to sit. I had peel ply on here, so I don't need to worry about sanding all of it. I just want to knock down the edges. Smooth smooth as can be. Now, if I'd been more careful laying up this glass, I wouldn't have had to knock down these edges here. It was simply just because I laid up a little too much glass. Even though I am going to lay up a few layers of glass on top of each and every hole, I also want to open them up a little bit before adding thickened epoxy. Sure, I could go ahead and grind down each area and lay up glass to the thickness of the Dodger, but there are 121 holes here that I need to fill. And yes, I counted them. I would be stuck doing this for days on end, so this is a lot faster. I'm gonna make one exception to my process here, and that's for this hole right here. These holes are a little bit larger than any of the other holes, in particular this one in the middle here. So for this, well, I'm gonna go the extra mile and grind down this area. Enter stage left, the spiffy epoxy card. Unfortunately, I've left my big roll of fiberglass aboard Athena, so all I've got is this little one, and that's fine for all of the smaller holes. Just not for the big one I just ground that bevel on. But that's fine, I can still go ahead and take care of all the small holes today. So let's do that. Let's get this party started. All of these areas are gonna get wetted out, they're gonna get a squeeze of thickened epoxy to fill up the hole, then a couple of layers of fiberglass, and then some peel ply. Cue the time lapse. Good morning, guys. I finished patching all of the smaller holes yesterday, but there is still a little bit of glasswork left on the to-do list. The Dodger looks almost like a quilt. It's just patches of peel ply all over the place. Here on the corner, one of those areas that still need a little bit of glasswork. As you can see, I've ground a nice bevel on this, so it's just a matter of cutting some patches of glass and laying it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Sometimes when you store epoxy resin, this happens. It gets a little cloudy and little white bits can form in there, but this is not a big deal. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but hopefully you can see that this is kind of cloudy and that there are little white specks in there. This is the silicone heating mat from such previous hits as my osmosis treatment. I'm using it to heat up the resin ever so slightly, just long enough for those little white specks to go away. It's been a few minutes and the resin is now clear as water. And as an added bonus, the viscosity is now a lot lower because the resin is warm, so it'll be a lot easier to wet out the fiberglass. I think we're just about there. It doesn't look like any of the glass is proud, so let's get a piece of peel ply on here. And that is yet another hole done. That's about it for all the glasswork I'm going to do to the Dodger for now. There are still a bunch of holes here left from the old windows, but speaking of the windows, these are the old windows. They're tempered glass with a frame made out of aluminum, and that aluminum has started to corrode a little bit. That is what happens when you use a combination of aluminum and stainless, and this is only going to get worse. So figuring that I'm doing a lot of work to the Dodger now, it makes sense to switch these out for some stainless ones. As far as the actual see-through part of the window, the glass is pristine. No scratches, no cracks, no nothing. So I'm very tempted to reuse this old glass. There are, of course, some plasticky alternatives. I've got a few samples right here. Although these two pieces of plastic may look very similar, there are actually some pretty big differences to them. One is cost. Acrylic, which is this one, is cheaper. It's also more scratch resistant of the two and also more UV resistant. But polycarbonate, the expensive one, is more impact resistant and flexible. That's both good and bad because, well, it's impact resistant, but also it flexes. That means it's harder to seal. I think tempered glass is going to be far superior to both of those two alternatives. So let's grab one of these and head into Cement Boat Guy's office and see what a stainless steel frame around one of these could look like. Hello, hello. Hello. Sorry if it sounds a little echoey in here. We'll do a minimum of talking. 1,265. 870. Now let's see what happens if we round those corners instead of having the pokey ones. We've printed out each of the corners to get an idea of what they're going to look like being rounded over. Just to give you guys a bit of a comparison, this is what the old pokey window looked like. I know it's kind of difficult to see with just the white paper on there, but both Cement Boat Guy and I think that the rounded corners are a big step up. That looks pretty freaking awesome. Seeing as there is nothing wrong with the glass, there are no scratches or anything, I figured it might be cool to reuse the old glass. But it's proving very difficult to get out of the frame, so I think I'm just going to get a quote for new glass and see if I want to bother with this. The plan for the new windows is to get 2 new frames laser cut in stainless and then sandwich a piece of glass in between them and then find some kind of suitable adhesive we can use and then bolt these to the Dodger. I've never built a window before, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of head scratching involved in this project. For instance, finding the right adhesive to adhere the glass to the metal and also figuring out the distance between the glass and the metal. But yeah, I think it's going to be worth it, and I think it's going to look pretty dang spiffy. More than likely, there are going to be a few weeks worth of lead time for those stainless steel frames for the new windows for the Dodger, but that's good news because that means I can get started on the new rudder. I've noticed some rust oozing out the bottom of the rudder. Now that could potentially be very bad news, and it's something I definitely want to take a look at. The problem is, to open up this rudder, it's going to be a destructive process. Last winter, I started opening up the rudder, but I quickly stopped that when I found out that this is not constructed using foam like modern rudders are. Looking at this stuff, and also from what I've been told, this is more than likely a mix of polyester and sand. It is hard as a rock. While it's very tempting to just open up the rudder and start looking for corrosion or any other kind of damage, I'm afraid I'm not gonna easily be able to put it back together again. So I think before I start digging into the rudder, the best thing I can do is just to make a mold out of the rudder. That way, if I wreck it completely, I can just build a new one. No matter what ends up happening to the rudder, a new bushing might be in order. I'm gonna make a little experiment to help me figure out how to make the mold of the rudder. When making molds, typically you'd use gel coat as the first layer, but I don't have any gel coat and I have no need for gel coat. I've heard rumors that it's possible to use slightly thickened epoxy in lieu of gel coat, but I'm very curious to see what kind of surface finish that will give me, so I've set up this little experiment. I've got 3 coats of wax on this gas cap here, so let's mix up some thickened epoxy and see how this goes. This is very lightly thickened. I am fully aware that this looks super janky. Remember, I'm just doing this to test to see if I can use slightly thickened epoxy instead of gel coat for when I make the mold for the rudder. This is just a test. While I'm waiting for that epoxy to gel, I might as well just have a little bit of fun. There are tons of upsides to using peel ply, and the joy you get from removing it, from ripping it off, That is not to be underestimated. It is a few hours later and this should just about be ready. Also, I'm kind of out of time, so let's get some glass on this. I'm gonna lay down 4 layers of glass. I don't care if they cover all of the gas cap. I just want to get enough of the thickened epoxy off of there so that I can see if it picks up the detail in the gas cap, if there are any kind of issues with bubbles, stuff like that. Unfortunately, you guys are going to have to wait until next weekend to find out how this little test is going to turn out. But if you've got any kind of a prediction, go ahead and leave it as a comment down below. One of the upcoming projects is to cast new bronze cleats, and we're almost ready to give it a go. We've got a couple of crucibles, we've got some bronze. We've also got the insulation for our furnace. These pieces of scrap here are gonna get turned into the tools we need to lift the crucible and also to do the pouring. I am super excited about that little casting project. I think that is gonna be a lot of fun. But then again, I'm also super excited about the Rudder project and the Dodger project, so it's all just very exciting right now, and I certainly hope you guys agree. I'm gonna end this video here because over the last 2 or 3 weeks, YouTube have been very slow about rendering or processing the videos I upload, and that's resulted in a lot of you guys seeing some very, very low resolution video, and I don't want that. So this weekend, I'm gonna give them just a little bit more time to get their butt in gear. If that doesn't work, if you guys only see low resolution versions of this video when I publish it, please check back in around 24 hours. YouTube should have gotten their act together by then. But yeah, other than that, I'll see you guys back here in the workshop in a week. So yeah, see you.